Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. My name is Tina Thibault, and I'm the Managing Director of Media Relations for the province of Nova Scotia. It is my pleasure to be with you today. Je m'appelle Tina Thibault, et c'est un plaisir pour moi d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui. Today, the Honourable Bill Blair, Canada's Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, and the Honourable Mark Furey, Attorney General and Minister of Justice for Nova Scotia, will make an announcement regarding the joint review of the Nova Scotia tragedy. Aujourd'hui, l'Honorable Bill Blair, ministre de la Sécurité publique et de la Protection civile du Canada, et Mark Furey, procureur général et ministre de la Justice de la Nouvelle-Écosse, fera une annonce concernant l'examen conjoint de la tragédie en Nouvelle-Écosse. To give you an idea of how today's event will unfold, we will have brief remarks from our speakers, followed by a question and answer session. Pour vous donner une idée du déroulement de l'événement aujourd'hui, nous entendrons d'abord de brèves allocutions de part de nos intervenants, lesquelles seront suivies d'une période de questions et de réponses. It is my pleasure to introduce the speakers. Please join me in welcoming the Honourable Bill Blair, Canada's Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness. Minister Blair, go ahead with your remarks, please.
Well, thank you very much, Tina, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us here today for what we believe is a very appropriate announcement. And in April of 18th and 19th of this year, Canadians in Nova Scotia and right across the country witnessed a heartbreaking series of events unfold. These events were shocking and deeply concerning to all Canadians. They devastated families, friends, and they had an enormous impact on communities. And as law enforcement officials shared what they had learned in the days and weeks that followed, many people have quite rightfully asked for a comprehensive review of how such a tragic event could have taken place. They want to know about all of the circumstances that led to it, and perhaps most importantly, they want to know what we must do to make sure that it does not happen again. And today, Minister Furey and I are announcing that we are jointly taking action together. The governments of Canada and Nova Scotia are launching a joint independent review of the April events to be conducted by a three-member independent review panel. The three panel members will include the Honourable Michael MacDonald, who will chair the panel, the Honourable Anne McClellan, and Ms. Leanne Fitch. These three individuals are prominent and experienced Canadians, and they have been selected because of their expertise in judicial fact-finding, independence, their knowledge of public safety and policing, and an understanding of the federal and provincial relations, roles, and responsibilities. Former Chief Justice Michael MacDonald served as the Chief Justice of Nova Scotia until his retirement in 2019. And as Chief Justice, he has led or promoted several very significant judicial outreach initiatives with Nova Scotia's Mi'kmaq and Black communities. He has also led initiatives to enhance the diversity on Nova Scotia's benches, including a judicial mentorship program for Black and Mi'kmaq lawyers, and Justice Day camps for students from Nova Scotia's marginalized communities. After retiring from the bench, he joined Stuart McKelvey as counsel, and in that capacity has continued to promote similar initiatives through the firm's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. We are very fortunate to have his leadership and his wisdom in chairing the panel for this review. The second member is Anne McClellan. Anne was born and raised in the North Shore of Nova Scotia and is currently a senior advisor in the Public Policy Practice Group with Bennett Jones. She obtained her law degree from Dalhousie, where she later served as its chancellor. She has a master's degree in law from King's College in London and has also taught law at the University of New Brunswick and the University of Alberta. Anne served 4 terms as a member of Parliament, and during that time, she served in very significant roles as the Deputy Prime Minister of the country and was responsible for several important federal ministerial portfolios, including public safety, and served as the Justice Minister and Attorney General of Canada. Our panel is rounded out by Leanne Fitch, who retired after 34 years in municipal policing in 2019, including 7 years in which she served as the Chief of the Fredericton Police Service. Ms. Fitch is a former roundtable member of the Provincial Department of Public Safety on Crime Reduction and Domestic and Intimate Partner Violence, and served as a member of the New Brunswick Domestic Violence Death Review Committee. She has taught criminology at St. Thomas University, and she is a published author on many topics, including intimate partner violence and community policing. Leanne also served as the past chair of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police Crime Prevention, Community and Safety and Wellbeing Committee, and she was instrumental in developing their national framework for intimate partner violence. I want to thank, and we are very grateful, that Justice MacDonald, Ms. McClellan, and Ms. Fitch have agreed to conduct this review on behalf of all Canadians. Their review will include a comprehensive look into the causes, context, and the circumstances that gave rise to the terrible and tragic events that took place in April of this year. It will include an examination of law enforcement responses and the steps taken to communicate with the community, to support and engage with victims' families and affected citizens. And I'll also add that other areas of focus will include the involvement of gender-based and intimate partner violence, and the perpetrator's access to firearms and police equipment. From the outset, Minister Furey and I have designed with consideration not to cause any further harm to victims, their families, or individuals directed by this tragedy. The review panel will conduct their work in a way which is at all times trauma-informed and uses restorative principles. We have also ensured that the panel will have independence required for an impartial and transparent investigation. We have asked them to deliver an interim report to both ministers in February of 2021, and they will issue their final report in August of 2021. Both reports will be made public in their entirety. And throughout this process, we will continue to provide information and support to victims, affected citizens, law enforcement personnel, and the community. At the federal level, I have directed the full cooperation of the RCMP, the Canada Border Service Agency, the Canadian Firearms Program, and all other federal implicated organizations. We understand that this review represents an important step forward as we look for answers for the families and friends of the innocent victims, and we learn how to ensure that nothing like this happens again. In the aftermath of this tragedy, all Canadians grieved with the families and with all Nova Scotians. I am very confident that the establishment of this review will give us a far better understanding of all of the events that took place on that tragic day, all of the circumstances that gave rise to it, all of the things that were done in response and in the aftermath, along with providing us with concrete recommendations to ensure that we can help prevent all future such tragedies. I'd now like to turn it over to the mic to Attorney General Mark Furey for his remarks. Thank you.
Go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Tina. On April 18th and 19th, Nova Scotians endured a tragedy that few can comprehend. The weeks since have been a time of many emotions and mourning in our province. Our hearts have been heavy from pain and loss and from struggling to understand. It has also been a time of reflection and questioning. We all have questions about how this happened, especially the families of those we lost, as well as the survivors. I know they are trying to make sense of why this happened to them. It's hard to find words that adequately express and capture the pain of 22 fellow Nova Scotians lost in this way. And it's hard to find words that explain the trauma so many Nova Scotians are experiencing. Nova Scotians have faced tragedy before. Those days in April were two of our province's darkest days. However, we cannot and will not let those days define us. Instead, we must aim to be defined in how we respond. Our response must aim to be constructive action to help our communities be safer. Our response must aim to do all we can to prevent such events from happening again. And our response must be grounded in how we care for each other, especially those who were most impacted. I know Nova Scotians have been waiting for today's announcement, especially the families and others who were most impacted. I've reached out to the families earlier this week. It was important to me that they heard the details of this announcement from me first. We must all commit to caring for and thinking of them first. Today, the Government of Canada and Nova Scotia are announcing a joint independent review of these tragic events. An independent panel has been appointed, as Minister Blair has referenced, with a broad investigative mandate to review this event in its totality. As Minister Blair indicated, the panel are made up of the Honourable J. Michael MacDonald, the Honourable Anne McClellan and Miss Leanne Fitch. Together, they have extensive knowledge, expertise, experience in judicial fact-finding, law enforcement, gender and intimate partner violence, intergovernmental relations, as well as other areas of expertise. They are all trusted public figures who we know will guard their independence and be impartial in their review to ensure that they fulfill their mandate in the public interest. I will add as well that the 3 panel members are all Maritimers, 2 from Nova Scotia and Anne McClellan, who grew up on the Knoll Shore. They know and understand our rural communities well. The Minister also alluded to the elements of the review. The panel will look at the causes, context, and circumstances of the April tragedy, including the responses of police and steps taken to inform, support, and engage victims' families and affected citizens. We've heard the calls for answers and know that the survivors, families of the victims, and the broader public want a process to get answers. That is independent from government and will make recommendations in an impartial and transparent manner. This review responds to those needs. I also understand that the families, and in fact all Nova Scotians, want accountability. Minister Blair and I are accountable to get the facts and answers for you. We are accountable for understanding what changes are needed to help prevent such events from happening again and managing them if they do occur. And we're accountable for ensuring citizens have trust and confidence in the public institutions under our jurisdiction. Therefore, all of the relevant institutions which fall under the authority of the province's jurisdictions will be required to participate fully in this review. This includes municipal police agencies, the Nova Scotia Medical Examiner's Office, the Nova Scotia Emergency Management Office, as well as the Nova Scotia Public Trustee. I expect the Honourable Michael MacDonald, Miss McClellan and Miss Fitch to take a very hard, broad and objective look at what happened so our governments and agencies can be responsive. I'm counting on the panel to recommend what further action is needed. The panel will play a key role in informing next steps. Their work is an important first step to ensure that families and those most harmed get the answers they so rightfully deserve. I want to thank the review panel members for accepting this call to service. They are individuals who are known for their integrity, experience, and expertise. All Nova Scotians can have confidence in them to be transparent, impartial, and independent in their work. We as a province have committed to learning and making change. We will fully consider the review panel's recommendations, and I expect that their recommendations will be well-informed, clear, impartial, and helpful in making improvements and effecting change. If there are changes we can make right away or simultaneously with the panel as they do their work, we will do that. We will act as required and needed throughout this process. The shared resolve of both levels of government is to learn and take action within our respective jurisdictions so that no other family, no other community, no other province suffers such a similar tragedy. This review will be guided by the contractual provisions and principles of independence, transparency, and impartiality. These 3 principles are fundamental to the work of the panel. We understand the need for public trust and confidence. This is crucial. We have taken steps to ensure the independence, transparency, and impartiality of this review panel is protected. They are also required, as Minister Blair alluded, to consider gender-based and intimate partner violence as part of their work. That is crucial and will happen. This review has been designed to not cause further harm to the victims and their families. The panel will work in a way that is trauma-informed and uses restorative approaches and principles to help ensure no further harm takes place with respect to those individuals directly impacted by this tragedy. Restorative principles will help guide how the panel undertakes its mandate, but it does not change the substance of its mandate to investigate and make findings and recommendations about how to proceed. When we talk about restorative principles, what we mean are the commitments that will guide how the panel approaches its work to ensure that they pay attention to the needs of those directly impacted. This does not require the panel to use a particular process or practice, and it's not aimed at bringing parties together to address or resolve harm. The responsibility to meet the needs of those individuals deeply affected by this tragedy extends beyond this review. Those directly impacted require ongoing support and care. We understand how difficult it has been for victims and their families to seek information and deal with multiple different systems, services, and issues. And we understand that the number of ongoing investigations and review processes may be difficult for families and others most impacted to navigate. Therefore, the province of Nova Scotia is setting up a multi-agency team to provide integrated, streamlined, and coordinated supports for families and others impacted. This team will focus on streamlining and coordinating communications, supports, and services so that the needs of those impacted are met. We will also make sure this is done in a way that is trauma-informed so that the families and others most impacted do not experience any undue harm or further stress in trying to get the support and care they deserve. Before I close, I want to acknowledge and thank the first responders who answered the call of duty on that weekend. They faced horror and challenges that most of us cannot relate to. I know that they too are experiencing pain and trauma that most of us cannot comprehend. I want to thank them for their bravery, their service, and their commitment in keeping us safe. They too have been in my thoughts and in my heart every day since April 18th and 19th. And to the families, communities, and others who were most impacted, we cannot know your grief, but we can walk with you every step of the way through your healing process. I'm confident this review will begin to answer some of your questions, and in doing so, contribute in some way to your healing. I want to acknowledge again the sorrow we feel for the loss of your loved ones. They were friends, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, parents, and children. It's our responsibility to do right for them, to do right for you, for those who were injured physically and mentally and survived, and for all Nova Scotians in our response to understand what happened, learn from it, and make sure it makes a real and lasting difference. We have a duty to those we lost, to do no less. A duty to Tom Bagley, Kristen Beaton and her unborn child, Jamie and Greg Blair, Peter and Joy Bond, Corey Ellison, Gina Goulet, Lillian Heislop, Don Madsen, Frank Gulenchin, Lisa McCulley, Sean McLeod, Alana Jenkins, Heather O'Brien, Jolene Oliver, Aaron Tuck and their daughter Emily Tuck, Constable Heidi Stevenson, Elizabeth Joanne Thomas and John Zoll, and Joey Weber. Thank you.
I now invite Parliamentary Secretary Joel Lightbound to deliver his remarks in French. Go ahead, Joel.
Merci beaucoup, modératrice. D'abord, d'entrée de jeu, permettez-moi simplement de m'excuser de ne pas pouvoir me joindre à vous par vidéoconférence pour des raisons techniques et permettez-moi aussi de remercier le ministre Furey et le ministre Blair de me permettre de joindre ma voix à la leur pour cette annonce qui est non seulement importante, mais qui est aussi nécessaire. En Nouvelle-Écosse et partout au pays, les Canadiens et les Canadiennes ont été témoins d'une série d'événements horribles et déchirants les 18 et 19 avril dernier. À mesure que les services policiers ont transmis ce qu'ils ont appris dans les semaines après l'incident, bon nombre de personnes réclament un examen complet de ce qui s'est passé. Aujourd'hui, on passe à l'action. Les gouvernements du Canada et de la Nouvelle-Écosse lancent un examen indépendant conjoint des événements d'avril. Cet examen sera mené par un comité indépendant composé de 3 membres. Les 3 membres du comité sont l'honorable J. Michael MacDonald, qui sera président du comité, l'honorable Anne McClellan et Mme Leanne J. Fitch. Ces Canadiens expérimentés et ces Canadiennes expérimentées et dignes de confiance ont été choisis en raison de leur indépendance, leur expertise en enquête judiciaire, leur connaissance de la sécurité publique et des services policiers et de leur compréhension des relations, des rôles et des responsabilités entre le gouvernement et les gouvernements provinciaux et le fédéral. Michael MacDonald était le juge en chef de la Nouvelle-Écosse jusqu'à sa retraite en 2019. Comme juge en chef, il a mené plusieurs projets d'intervention au sein des communautés noires et Mi'kmaq de la Nouvelle-Écosse. Après sa retraite, il s'est joint au cabinet de Stuart McKelvey comme avocat. Anne McClellan est née et a grandi à Knowles Shore, en Nouvelle-Écosse. Elle a obtenu son baccalauréat en droit à l'Université Dalhousie. Elle est actuellement conseillère principale avec le cabinet Bennett Jones LLP. Elle a été vice-première ministre du Canada et elle a été responsable de plusieurs portefeuilles ministériels fédéraux, notamment la sécurité publique, la justice comme procureur général. Leanne Fitch a pris sa retraite quant à elle en 2019 après 34 ans dans le domaine policier, notamment comme chef de la police de Fredericton pendant 7 ans. Elle a enseigné la criminologie à l'Université St. Thomas. Elle est une auteure ayant publié des livres sur plusieurs sujets, notamment sur la violence conjugale et la police communautaire. Ce comité important aura comme mandat de mener un examen approfondi. Cet examen va comprendre une évaluation complète des causes, des contextes et des circonstances qui ont permis aux terribles événements d'avril de se produire. De plus, l'examen portera sur l'intervention policière ainsi que les mesures prises pour communiquer avec la communauté et pour soutenir et mobiliser les victimes, les familles et les citoyens impactés. L'examen sera également axé sur la violence conjugale et la violence misogyne ainsi que l'accès aux armes à feu. Cet examen se fera avec un aspect de justice réparatrice afin de ne pas causer plus de tort et de mal aux victimes, à leurs familles et aux personnes touchées directement par cette tragédie. Le comité d'examen va effectuer son travail en tenant compte des traumatismes vécus. Et on a également veillé à ce que le comité ait l'indépendance nécessaire pour mener une enquête impartiale et transparente. Le comité transmettra un rapport provisoire aux 2 ministres, Furey et Blair, en février 2021 et un rapport définitif en août 2021. Ces 2 rapports seront rendus publics. Cela dit, le travail du comité n'est qu'une partie d'un processus qui se veut beaucoup plus grand. Tout au long de ce processus, on va continuer de collaborer afin de fournir des renseignements et du soutien aux victimes, aux citoyens touchés, aux membres des forces de l'ordre et à l'ensemble de la communauté. Au niveau fédéral, le ministre Blair a réclamé la collaboration entière de la GRC, de l'Agence des services frontaliers du Canada, du Programme canadien des armes à feu et des autres organisations impliquées. Tous les Canadiens et toutes les Canadiennes offrent leur support aux familles des victimes et à tous les Néo-Écossais. Nous sommes sûrs que le comité d'examen qu'on annonce aujourd'hui va nous permettre de mieux comprendre ces événements et va nous donner des recommandations afin d'éviter que de telles tragédies se reproduisent. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. We will now open the floor to questions. Nous allons commencer la période de questions et réponses. To give everyone a chance to participate, please limit yourself to 1 question and 1 follow-up. Please begin your question by identifying yourself and naming the media outlet you represent. Afin de donner la chance à tous les gens de participer, veuillez vous limiter à 1 question et 1 suivi. Veuillez commencer votre question en vous identifiant et en nommant l'organe de presse que vous représentez. Operator, please proceed with our first question. Nous sommes prêts pour notre première question.
Thank you. Merci. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. There will be a brief pause while the participant register for questions. Il y aura un court délai vous permettant de vous enregistrer dans la file d'attente pour la période de questions. Thank you for your patience. Merci de patienter. The first question, la première question, is from Lindsay Armstrong, All Nova Scotia. Please go ahead, your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to know why you've elected to use an independent review instead of a public inquiry, given that this review does not require binding recommendations or compel individuals to speak under oath.
Who's it directed to?
Lindsay, who is your question directed to? Which minister?
Or no.
Go ahead, Minister.
In the work that took place among both governments as we reviewed all of the options, we felt that the review process itself provided the most timely opportunity in setting up a panel and the most timely opportunity for the earliest responses. We've seen in the past it takes extended periods of time to set up inquiries. We were focused on finding answers. We've heard the concerns of the families and communities, and although not everyone may agree with a review process, it enables us to gather that information at the earliest opportunity and to find recommendations that we are able to act on at the first opportunity. I would also say that, specific to your comments around binding recommendations, whether it's a review or an inquiry, recommendations are not binding in either environment. It's the commitment of individual governments to ensure that recommendations are implemented. And I think I can speak for both Minister Blair and myself that that is our objective.
Operator, is Lindsay still there for her follow-up question?
Hi, yes, sorry about the issue there. And my follow-up is, why did it take 3 months to arrive at this decision?
The work that both governments have undertaken to establish and build the mandate and the terms of reference took a considerable amount of time. We also recognize that the panel itself, the review and the panel, had to be a panel of those individuals with the broadest experience relevant to the scope of the review and the content of the terms of reference in the areas we wanted to focus on. And that took time to identify those individuals with that specific background and experience. And as we've both indicated, that experience in judicial fact-finding, that experience in the areas of gender-based violence and intimate partner violence, that experience in understanding government, provincial and federal relations, public policy, was critical to ensure that the review panel was positioned to be successful. And in these circumstances, that took time. And I want to extend to the family members that if that time we've taken to ensure we get the answers you want caused further grief to you, I want to apologize to you for that. We understand this is very difficult.
And
Please identify what minister your question is for. Go ahead, operator, with the next question.
Thank you. Merci. The next question, la prochaine question is from Nicole Nunro, Halifax Chronicle. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Yes, I'm looking at, this would be for Furey, who is going to oversee to make sure that the RCMP fully cooperates and the government jurisdictions fully cooperate with the inquiry, or sorry, the independent review?
So that's actually a question best directed to Minister Blair, but as he indicated earlier, he has the authority to provide direction to the Commissioner of the RCMP. I will defer to my colleague.
Thank you very much, Mark. And as indicated, I have an authority under the Public Safety Minister of Canada has an authority under the RCMP Act to direct the Commissioner of the RCMP and also President of CBSA and other implicated foreign ministries and organizations and departments to fully cooperate in this investigation. And I've given that direction. I will also assure you and Nova Scotians that the RCMP is also very, very keen to ensure that all of the facts of these circumstances are made known, and as well also keen that there are lessons that can be learned in order to improve the quality of the response and to ensure that such a tragedy never happens again. And so I have exercised my authority to direct the full cooperation and as well. I have great confidence in our panel members, and I am with great certainty sure that Chief Justice MacDonald will identify any concerns or that he's that in gathering the necessary information. If I may respond a little bit to the issues around timing and delay and speak to that just briefly. In the immediate aftermath of this terrible tragedy in April, and within a few short days, Mr. Furey and I were talking about the importance and the need for review, but we also recognized the importance of the criminal investigation that was ongoing at that time. And as information came out and we became more aware of all of the facts and circumstances of this terrible tragedy, it informed a lot of our decision as to who the right people were to participate in this panel and the full scope of the review that would be undertaken. And so we have been working on this for some period of time. I also want to acknowledge the very significant concerns and quite understandable concerns that families of the victims and the community have expressed about the need for review. We know people need answers and they deserve answers, and we are absolutely committed to ensuring that they get those answers in a fair, comprehensive, and objective review conducted by a totally independent panel members. They also want to be sure that both levels of government, the government of Nova Scotia and the government of Canada, will take all of the steps necessary in response to the recommendations that we will receive to ensure that we respond appropriately and that this does not happen again. And we are absolutely committed to doing that. Thank you.
Go ahead, operator, with the next question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, the next question is from Jean Laroche, CBC News. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Thank you very much. I just want to ask Mr. Furey, this is not what the families asked for as early as yesterday when they marched to the RCMP headquarters or detachment in Truro. Many of them said they wanted the process to be open and fully public. This doesn't even come within a country mile of that, and I wondered why you didn't heed what these families were asking of you.
We looked at a number of factors in exploring the options that we had available to us, including the families and others who were quite vocal in expressing their desire for answers. And in that, we identified collectively a focus on independence, transparency, and impartiality. And those are the core attributes of an inquiry as well. And we feel with all of the elements of this review and the scope that it will encompass, that this review, bearing in mind that focus on those attributes, will in fact get the same outcomes and answers that families and others are looking for.
I just wondered, Minister, though, what was the downside of having this a fully public inquiry?
When we look at recent inquiries, and I'll be specific to the restorative inquiry for the Home for Colored Children, One of the outcomes of that inquiry was that governments had to do things differently. That a focus on a human-centered approach to the needs of individuals, and in these circumstances to the needs of the families, the hurt and emotions that families are experiencing. We have to be attentive to that. That the response and work is trauma-informed. And as we move forward, ensure that we cause no further harm as we investigate the circumstances of April 18th and 19th. I would say this: the pursuit of truth need not come at the cost of re-traumatizing or re-victimizing individuals. We see the review process and the strength of the panel and the discretion of the panel based on their experience and expertise to administer this review in a way that gets the answers that families and Nova Scotians want.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, the next question is from Michael Totten, the Canadian Press. Please go ahead, your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Minister Blair and Furey, why have the governments of Canada and Nova Scotia chosen a process that does not grant its commissioners the powers available in a public inquiry, including information being provided under oath?
Go ahead, Mark, please.
I'll go back to some of my previous comments. When we looked at the options available to us, and we considered all of those options, for us, the ability to get answers as quickly as we could, we recognized that standing up an inquiry was going to take considerable time. We have an inquiry on the go in the province as we speak. It took 2 years to establish that process. We heard loud and clear that people wanted answers. We heard loud and clear that people wanted early changes so these circumstances could be managed or mitigated into the future. We recognized that a review allowed us to take an early approach to set up this process in as quick a way possible so that we can ask those questions, secure those answers, make changes as we progress through the process, and implement those recommendations once the panel completes their work the end of summer in 2021.
And if I may simply add to that, we also wanted to ensure that the families of victims and community was at the center of this review. That it was designed in such a way as to be restorative in nature, and to work with those communities. And quite often, in my experience in public inquiries, the families of victims have very little standing in such a legal instrument. What we listened to and heard very clearly from Nova Scotians and from the victims' families is they wanted answers to exactly what happened, all of the circumstances that gave rise to this terrible tragedy that occurred, and they also wanted to ensure that it never happened again. And after very careful consideration, we believe that, first of all, the composition of the expert independent panel that we are putting in place today contains such a broad range of experience and expertise that it has an extraordinary capacity to provide those answers and to come with recommendations that will inform future government decision making to improve the response to these type of tragedies and to prevent them. We also recognize that how important it was in this work to ensure that that the answers were given in a timely way. And as Minister Furey has indicated, this was enabled us to stand this up as quickly as possible and to provide those answers. And finally, because of the circumstances of this terrible tragedy, and the fact that as the Public Safety Minister for Canada and the Attorney General in Nova Scotia, the two of us have the ability to direct the full cooperation and disclosure of all information to the panel members. We've made that undertaking to the panel members, and we'll work very closely to ensure that they have access to all of the information they need to be able to inform the victims of the families of these victims and all Nova Scotians and all Canadians exactly what transpired here. And this does not, the conduct of a review does not preclude other legal processes. A criminal investigation or subsequent charges, should they be appropriate, can still proceed. Civil matters can still proceed. There are other forms of resolution that are available to the people that are involved in this terrible tragedy, but we can get the answers. And through the expertise of the people that we've appointed to this panel, we believe that this is the best way. And what we heard very clearly, people need those answers, and they need them as quickly as possible. And we're undertaking to get them those answers and that information, and to then take action to ensure that we respond in an appropriate way.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, the next question is from Alicia Draus, Global News. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Thank you. This question is for Minister Furey. I'm just wondering, in the past, you had indicated one of the reasons that this is taking so long to announce was that any probe must have the ability and the power to compel witnesses to testify and the ability to make binding recommendations. But this review doesn't offer either of those. So I'm just wondering what changed between when you said that and now.
Well, we looked at all of the factors, as I've explained earlier, in a review versus an inquiry, and sensitive to the impact on families and the timeliness of the ability to stand up a review versus an inquiry, and the expectations of the public, quite frankly, for early answers, and the authority that both the federal minister and I have around directing agencies and entities under our area of responsibility. We felt that the review was the most appropriate medium to get those answers, to provide clarity, to secure recommendations, and allow us to implement those changes and to implement the recommendations, and make those changes as early as we possibly can.
I understand that's why maybe you chose to go this route, but again, in the past that you said any probe must have the ability and the power to compel witnesses to testify and make binding recommendations. So why did you backtrack on those previous comments?
So, as I indicated, when we did a broad analysis of the options, a review versus an inquiry, we felt this was the best avenue to take. To establish that early response, to be able to set up the review with competent individuals who are able to act and investigate the matters before us, relative to recommendations. As I've indicated earlier today, recommendations are not binding in either of an inquiry or a review process. It is the commitment of governments to implement those recommendations, and that is our intent in these circumstances. The panel will do what I believe to be exhaustive, competent, and thorough work, and we look forward to the recommendations.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, the next question is from Tim Bousquet, Halifax Examiner. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Yeah, thank you. A couple questions here. One, my understanding is that both the federal and provincial governments, the cabinets, have the power to name the three panel members as commissioners, which would give them subpoena power and the ability to compel testimony. Would your respective governments do that?
I'm quite confident in the skills and experience of the panelists and their pursuit of independence, that they will be able to gather the information they need over the course of this investigation, this review, to get the answers we need. And I'm very confident that the recommendations they present to our governments next summer will allow us to effect change. I'm very confident the panel can achieve their work.
If I may also respond, I share that confidence. I think we have been very fortunate in that we've been able to identify and they've agreed to serve and to offer their services and their expertise. I think all three of the panel members are people that bring a vast amount of experience and expertise to this. They have our absolutely unwavering commitment to our full cooperation, the full cooperation of the agencies and departments under which we have authority, and I believe they have the necessary authorities. I also have great confidence in their experience and their ability, and I'm also certain if they have any difficulties encountering in obtaining the information that they require, they'll advise us of that. But I believe we have provided them with the appropriate level of authorities. And in my experience, when we have the opportunity to have people with this level of expertise, they are able to do the job. Let me also assure the families and Nova Scotians, we know they want answers. We all want a full, comprehensive, and independent review of all of the circumstances that led up to this terrible tragedy. We want to ensure that we learn all of the lessons and take the necessary steps to make sure it never happens again. And so we are absolutely committed to this. And both Minister Furey and I are in agreement that this is the right approach and that we believe we have the right people to do the work, and that they have the necessary authorities to get Nova Scotians the answers that they need and deserve, and to make sure that we learn all of the lessons that need to be learned from this terrible tragedy so that we can take appropriate steps to resolve it.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, the next question is from Natasha Pace, CTV News. Please go ahead, your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Thank you. Minister Furey, I understand that both ministers are saying that you feel this is the appropriate approach and it would be quicker to get answers for families. What would your message to families be today who are telling us that they're furious with this independent review that was just announced?
I spoke with, had the opportunity to speak with family members yesterday, and I heard from them, and certainly aware of the position that an inquiry is that mechanism that they would prefer. When we look at all of the factors in making the decision, we felt that the approach of the review and the strength of the panel, given the authority that they have, will get the answers they need. And what I heard in talking with family members and hearing those who expressed their opinions leading up to our announcement today, people wanted independence. They wanted transparency, they wanted accountability, and they wanted impartiality. Those are the same core attributes of an inquiry. I believe with the strength of this panel, their familiarity and awareness in this focus, we can get the same answers that we would through an inquiry. We will get those answers sooner than later, and we will be able to act on those. And I also believe that as the review progresses, we've empowered the panel to speak publicly at any time, whether it's over the course of their work in accessing information, or anyone interfering in the independence of that panel, or if they see an opportunity for early resolution with some of the work and findings that they land on. There's no doubt in my mind, if there are early opportunities through the review process, that the panel will be quick to share those findings and allow either of the federal or provincial governments to act on those and effect early change. I believe, and I share this with the families, we have an opportunity for an earlier approach earlier resolutions, and a greater opportunity to make change much quicker than we could through the inquiry process.
Thank you. Merci. The next question, la prochaine question.
I'm sorry.
The next question, la prochaine question is from Paul Wells, McLean Magazine. Please go ahead, your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
I could read you the list of all the people who asked for a public inquiry with authority to compel testimony under oath. That list of persons and organizations would be hundreds of names long. Can you name for me which person or organization asked you for a process that could not compel testimony under oath? Who asked for that?
There was no one that outright asked for a review. We looked at all of the factors in comparing a review to an inquiry. As I said earlier, the opportunity to respond in a much quicker way to the work is through a review, and we believe that the authority that both the minister and I have give us that opportunity to come to findings and to be able to implement recommendations much quicker than we ever could in an inquiry.
Okay. People have been wondering what's been going on between you for 3 months now. Do you ever worry that when you claim to be seeking a timely resolution by taking 3 months to come up with a process, and when you claim to be putting families at the center of the process by ignoring their specific requests, do you worry that you're bringing the general administration of justice in this country into disrepute?
Not at all. I believe the analysis that we have done in comparing a review to an inquiry identifies the same elements, the same core attributes. People have asked for independence. They've asked for impartiality in decision making. They've asked for transparency. Those elements exist here in a review process. We have a panel that brings significant expertise to this environment, to this review. They have the authority and directions of the ministers at their disposal. They have the opportunity to speak publicly if there are barriers or obstructions. I believe the review, given all of the factors and our ability to stand it up early and to get early response and early recommendations, is what we all want collectively.
Thank you. Merci. We have a follow-up question from Natasha Pace from CTV News. Please go ahead. The line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Thank you. Could you just explain a bit about when this process will actually start, and I guess the timeline a bit, like how involved will families actually be in this review?
So the review, the panel are prepared to start work right away. To be honest, we've identified a start date of the end of August. There's some administrative matters for the panel to get them set up and office space and those types of things. But the panel is ready to start their work. We look to a midterm report by the end of February 2021, and we look to the final report by August of 2021.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, the next question is from David Ljunggren from Reuters Canada. Please go ahead, your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Thank you. A couple of questions for Minister Blair. Minister, there's been a lot of criticism of the RCMP's actions before, during, and after the incident. to what extent did these criticisms encourage you to announce this review?
Yeah, thank you for the question. First of all, let me say that public trust in policing services is absolutely critical to keeping communities safe, and we listen very carefully and continue to listen to concerns that are expressed by the people of that community and in Nova Scotia about the police activities and response, both prior and during this event. And so certainly, we're highly motivated to ensure that the people who have questions, particularly the families of the victims, deserve answers, and we are absolutely committed to getting them. I also want to acknowledge that, let us also acknowledge the incredibly difficult job and the tragic circumstances that the police were responding to on April 18th and 19th. Many of those officers responded with remarkable courage. I'm also very mindful that Constable Heidi Stevenson lost her life as part of this tragedy took place there. I believe absolutely that all Nova Scotians, including those who serve in policing in that community, deserve and need answers. And we are absolutely committed to getting them those answers. And I appreciate that there may be a number of different opinions as to what legal instrument might be utilized to do this. But in our collective judgment, this is the most timely and appropriate way to proceed. And so we are proceeding to work hard to get those answers. We've impaneled 3 extraordinary individuals who bring an enormous level of expertise, experience, and wisdom to this important work. We've given them a totally independent and comprehensive, objective mandate to conduct this review and to get the answers that people seek. I do understand some of the concerns that are being expressed, but ensuring that people get the answers and that we ensure that the policing services, not just in Nova Scotia, but right across Canada, are the quality of policing services and response that Canadians deserve and need to be safe in their communities. We're highly motivated. And the circumstances of this tragedy, we are all committed to ensure that such a tragedy can never happen again in Canada. There are lessons to be learned here. We are committed to getting all of those facts, all of that information, learning those lessons, and taking the steps necessary to keep Canadians in Nova Scotia and across Canada safe. And so we're highly motivated by the need for and have confidence in this panel to get us those answers and to give us the advice that'll help us respond appropriately.
And how concerned are you with some of the things you've been hearing about the RCMP's actions before, during, and after the killings?
I, like many Canadians, have questions, and I have some insight into the response, but I believe that there is more information that must be made known to all Canadians. We know the families of victims have questions about all of the things that transpired leading up to this tragic event, what was done in response. I know there were questions about the communications at the time and subsequent to this tragedy. And so I believe that there is a great deal that we need to learn. And I am very confident in the panel members that we have impaneled to do this important work. They bring a level of experience and expertise, and they have a very broad mandate to get us all the answers that we seek and to give us advice. And I think we've got the right people to give us the advice on how we can improve the response for all Canadians in the future. And I believe that's also exactly what the law enforcement agencies who were involved in this response want as well.
We have time for one more question. Nous avons le temps pour une dernière question. Go ahead, operator.
Thank you. Merci. The last question is from Todd Battis, CTV News. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte. Mr. Battis, your line is open. Okay. The last question is from Steve McKinley, Toronto Star. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Votre ligne est ouverte.
Hi, question for Minister Furey. I'm just going to go down the list here. You've got a panel that can't compel testimony under oath. You've got recommendations that aren't binding. You've got testimony from families is going to be confidential. You've set up a panel that most of the families that we've talked to are opposed to. They're unhappy with the process. How do you foresee this particular panel restoring any kind of public trust?
I didn't get all of your question, but I'm going to deal with the two parts I heard. You talked about compelling witnesses. Issuing of subpoenas is not the only way to source or to gather information. We've empowered this panel. We've given direction to the agencies and entities under our authority. We've empowered the panel to speak publicly if anyone interferes with their independence and any obstruction in their ability to gather the information they need. Those are key elements to the panel's ability to do their work, but also the integrity and the reputation and strength of the panel itself cannot be dismissed. These are highly competent people who also recognize the importance of their work in securing public trust. I'm confident that the panel is able, with the authorities they have and abilities they have, to gather the information that Nova Scotians and Canadians want. And we look forward to the recommendations, whether they come early through the midterm report or following the completion of their work and their final report in August of next year.
Just to follow up on that, I'm just going to sort of reiterate the question. With so many questions which you've heard here, which you've heard the families talk about, there seems to be not an awful lot of confidence that we are going to hear the answers that we need. So if you were talking to people who are, who have flagging trust in the government and their police, how can you reassure them that they're going to get the kind of answers they're looking for?
Well, I can say that both the federal minister and I are committed to this work, and that the individuals who make up this panel bring extensive experience. We have to allow the panel to start their work. We have to allow the process to begin. And I'm confident as that work begins and unfolds and families and community members are engaged, they will see the strength of the panel, they will see the inherent values of the review, and there will be a level of confidence and public trust. We realize that in some circumstances public trust has been broken. The federal minister and I are both accountable to ensure that we restore that trust, and it's going to take time. We believe the review process and the work that the panel will do will start us on that course to rebuild trust, not only with the families, but those communities that are most impacted, and Canadians in general who have expressed their own concerns.
That is all the time we have for today. Thank you all for your participation.